Cell block B, lock 'em up. Although John Howard began his prison reforms in England in the 1700s with ideas like medical care and food for prisoners, keeping hardened prisoners away from young offenders, and actually releasing prisoners upon the completion of their sentence, some of these ideas hadn't caught on in all precincts. For example, the British Columbia John Howard Society wasn't formed until 1931 to try to take care of problems in the provincial prison system. And thankful inmates created certificates of appreciation for the Society's first president. But that's the kind of man that Reverend Art Sovereign was. Humane, involved, devoted, the kind of guy who liked to roll up his sleeves and get the job done. And it was to the great good fortune of the people of Vernon that Bishop Sovereign decided to retire to the North Okanagan, because he wasn't finished doing his good works yet, not by a long shot. Ron Candy, the curator of the Vernon Museum, tells us the story of Bishop Arthur Henry Sovereign, not a run-of-the-mill clergyman, on this edition of Pioneers in Places. Welcome to Pioneers in Places. Mike Roberts with you, and my storyteller for today is the curator of the Vernon Museum, Ron Candy. A very fascinating person, our subject for tonight, Bishop Arthur Sovereign. We're going to start actually with his arrival in Vernon, first of all, at the tender age of 69, sort of retiring to the Vernon area, but retirement didn't figure in his plans once he got here.
Not at all. I mean, he arrived in Vernon 1950. And as you say, he was 69 years old, and for most of us that would be an age where you're beginning to slow down, but not so for Arthur Sovereign. He was speeding up, if anything else. And he's probably best known for his help in forming Silver Star Park. Now, he was also involved with the Toastmasters Club, forming the Toastmasters Club, the Gyro Club, all these other things. But Silver Star Park was one of his babies. That's probably his one shining moment, was Silver Star Park.
And of course, he was a big fan of, for all sorts of reasons, alpining and physical activity, and that's really the subject of what we're going to be talking about, where this guy came from.
Exactly.
Because not only when he came here did he do the thing with Silver Star Park, but so many things which continue today are in effect in Vernon because of him. The Venture Training Center.
Absolutely. He was involved with the formation of the Venture Training Center. He was involved with anything that would somehow better people's lives. The Boys Club, which was, again, one of his areas, very important area for him, the development of boys. He had this slogan that he used all his life, which was, "It's better to build a boy than to mend a man." And that really summarized everything about Arthur Sovereign. He was very concerned about kids and their welfare, and he was, as you say, he was a mountain climber. He was an athlete of sorts, and hence his interest in Silver Star and the ski area, that kind of stuff. He wanted kids to be out doing stuff.
Yeah, and I have on the table in front of me here, presented to him in the year of his death, 1966, a handsome medal and an award for his distinguished humanitarian service to the Vernon area.
Yeah. It was given to him by the John Howard Society, something he was involved with very early on in 1931 down in Vancouver, and helped to form the John Howard Society here in the North Okanagan. Yeah, very, very influential man.
So if you're thinking that at 69 you're too old to make any kind of a contribution, remember Bishop Arthur Sovereign.
Absolutely.
Now we're going to do a little flashback, because how does the Okanagan come to inherit these spectacular personalities who choose to come here and obviously make these great contributions? And that's what we're going to do in our second segment. We'll come back in just a moment to tell you about where this guy came from, Bishop Arthur Henry Sovereign, right after this word. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts talking with Ron Candy about Bishop Arthur Sovereign. This guy, born in 1881, comes from United Empire Loyalist stock in Southern Ontario. Everything he does, he seems to do at a young age.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He was brilliant. He decided at about the age of 15 that he wanted to enter the ministry. He initially wanted to be a doctor, get into the medical profession, but other influences drew him towards the church. And by the time he was 15, he'd made his decision that that's what he was going to do. But when he was 18, he was already teaching school. Bear in mind, we're only 18 years old. Little school north of Woodstock, the Tollgate School. He had a class of 65 pupils, ranging in age from 6 years old to 22 years old. I mean, you got to have a brilliant mind to deal with that.
Just to keep
up with that. He then, later on, in 1902, entered University of Toronto, Theological College at Wycliffe. By 1905, he had his BA. By 1906, he had his MA.
Took him a year to get
Took him a year to get his MA. And then he was ordained the following year by 1907. In 1909, he was practicing, he was a rector practicing as a priest in Vancouver at St. Mark's, a newly opened church on the outskirts of Vancouver, in amongst the brush and the stumps and the plywood sidewalks, not the plywood sidewalks, but the plank sidewalks.
So he was on the edge of wilderness at that location.
Absolutely on the edge of wilderness. But he took what was just a small parish. His numbers when he first started at St. Mark, he had like 12, I think, people coming to his church. There were 15 in his Sunday school class, so that wasn't bad. He was off to a good start. But in the 20-some-odd years he was there, he took that church from 12 people to over 1,000 members. His Sunday school had blossomed to over 1,000. It was actually the largest Sunday school class west of Winnipeg at the time, in the late 1920s, early 1930s. It was the first church in Vancouver to have a gymnasium. It was the first church in Canada to have summer camp for kids. And again, this is where his interests in children really got to move. He got them into mountain climbing. He produced little pamphlets for parents on the importance of getting the kids out of doors and doing stuff. Yeah, amazing man.
And his first introduction to the Vernon area, to the Okanagan, occurs right around now, 1912, as he meets the love of his life. How does he meet the love of his life?
He's a mountain climber. We know this already. He was involved with the Alpine Club of Canada. And the Alpine Club was formed in 1906, so he was in there in the early stages. And every year they would meet somewhere to climb. And in 1912, they met in Vermilion, just outside Banff. Well, there he met Ellen Ellison, the daughter to Price Ellison.
The most powerful member of Parliament in the provincial house.
That's right. I mean, he was no slouch, exactly. But I don't think he was interested in Price so much as Ellen.
Look at these photographs here. Isn't that a great shot? That's probably Ellen on the edge of the glacier. I mean, that is just an artful, wonderful shot, isn't it? Yeah,
wonderful picture of up in Garibaldi. And of course, he was also part of the Garibaldi Parks Board. He was instrumental in the forming of Garibaldi Park. And yes, he was just a mountain climber to the nth degree. His favorite pictures of Ellen were taken very early on. You can see these pictures where she was in mountain climbing garb. Yeah. And we're told by Beth Nielsen, his Bishop Sovereign's daughter, that these were his favorite pictures of Ellen, and he had them on his desk always.
So now he has a love of his life to help him through all of these other things, and he is busy as can be down in Vancouver.
Busy man, busy man.
What happens though, as you said, he spent about 20 years there. What kicks him to his next level?
Well, what's interesting is when he was in Vernon in 1913, that began his association with Vernon. I mean, he was married at the church in Vernon, Anglican Church in Vernon, and the couple went off to Europe for a year, which I'm sure was a gift from Price. And he spent some time at Oxford, did some more studies, came back, and he thought, okay, the war is starting. It was 1914. He got back just ahead of the war. The war is starting. I've been away for a year. I can't leave my church again. Maybe later. In 1917, an interesting group was formed called the Carkey University. And what that was was a group of individuals who decided that servicemen overseas really needed to get some kind of training to prepare them for when the war ends and they got to come back into society. And Sovereign thought that is something I can get involved with. So over he went in 1918, over to Britain, got involved with Carkey University and was teaching men in the trenches, in the classroom, giving them lectures, sermons on everything. I mean, they were teaching men who couldn't...
What they needed to know.
Couldn't read or write, right up to the trades professions, everything they needed to know to get them back into society. And that's what he did over in 1918. We even have his permit to leave Canada in 1918.
And I love these permits too, because they tell you so much about the guy. He is a small but dynamic character. It says here he's only 5'4½", 138 pounds, and this is the small dynamic character that's teaching men in the trenches. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he was just a wiry little guy full of energy. And when he came back, after World War I, coming back, he again carried on at St. Mark's. That's, of course, when he did all this fantastic work with the camps, establishing the gymnasium and so on. In 1932, he was raised to the level of bishop and given the opportunity to go to the Yukon. Now, for him to leave St. Mark's at this point in time was a hard thing. But he felt, you know, being a man of God, a man of the cloth, he was going to follow wherever God sent him. And at that point in time, it was the Yukon. Now, a curious thing happened right about the same time. In Winnipeg, a little incident called the Macaulay disaster, or the Macaulay affair. A lawyer by the name of John Macaulay was looking after the investments of a lot of large organizations, the University of Manitoba and the Anglican Church. He absconded with funds, something to the tune of $1.8 million, left the church penniless. When Sovereign went to the Yukon, he arrived there to find out that his diocese, the Diocese of Yukon, was broke. And he had the opportunity to actually say, no, I don't think I'm going to do this, but he went ahead and did it anyway. And when he left, his parishioners gave him, you know, they were sad to see him go, of course. They gave him a ring which has the coat of arms of the Yukon on one side, new vestments and everything else. So he was set to go. And as I say, he could have turned back and decided, I don't want to do this, it doesn't look good, I have no money, but he went regardless. And he was there for 10 months in Yukon, in Dawson. Of course, his family was with him as well. And then there was some shuffling, again, due to money problems. They had to ship him off to Athabasca, the Athabasca Diocese in Peace River. And it was a 10-day trip by sled, because he left, it was late winter, early spring, still snow on the ground, nothing that we would associate with roads. And by sled, packed up from Dawson and went to Peace River. It took him 10 days in the cold and the muck.
And he decides at this stage that there is a way he can turn this around. I mean, it's the Depression. Nobody has any money in North America at all, and yet he figures he's got a way to do it. I'm going to take a break here, be back in just a second, because he does an audacious thing, and it works out. We'll tell you about that right after this break. Welcome back to Pioneers and Places. Mike Roberts with Ron Candy talking about Archbishop Arthur Sovereign and his trip to England. He decides he's going to raise some cash for the Diocese of Athabasca.
Absolutely. He thinks this is his only course of action. Back to the motherland, as it were, for Church of England. Take with him along a box of slides, of the glass slides of the area, Athabasca and mountains and things that, you know, the Brits like to see of Canada. And literally just go through a speaking tour, sermons, lectures, whatever he can do to raise funds.
So nothing the Brits like more than to see a little bit of the Commonwealth, wilderness. So these glass slides are ones that he took back there to fascinate them.
Exactly.
How successful is he at fascinating them?
He's pretty successful. Now, he already is a very good speaker. He can command a crowd without any problem at all. He did something like 207 separate sermons, lectures, and so on. raised $100,000 in 5 months.
Not only the money, he raised a clothing, which he bailed up.
He spoke with women's groups, church groups, organizations that bailed up clothing. Now, literally bales of clothing. This is how he describes it. Bales of clothing, left England, came to Canada. Ellen was back in Canada, of course, in Peace River, receiving all this stuff and distributing it to the north, to people who need it. And it was everything from clothing to toys, anything that might be needed on a comfort level. He was shipping that over as well. And interestingly enough, when he was over there, he also preached at St. Paul's Cathedral, Winchester Cathedral, and of course the biggie, Westminster Abbey. And it's funny because he actually writes a card home on the back and says, all well, have collected $10,000 so far, preaching at St. Paul's under the dome, and he sends this postcard with an X marking where he's going to be there.
It's the only thing in there with a dome on it, but he
That's
marked
right.
the X on it anyway.
When he preached at Westminster, that was December 23rd, so it was a very prestigious time of the year to be preaching at Westminster Abbey. He was given 2 guineas as his honorarium for preaching. Now that translates to about $8. And he went out and bought a simple gold cross to replace the big heavy one that he'd been wearing for his ordinary occasions, as he put it. And he was also picking up clothing for himself. Now he'd go down to the offices of the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, and they would give him clothes to wear. And he found that to buy a suit at Whipple's, which was the place in London for the clergy to go and buy vestments and suits and so on, was just too expensive. A suit was 12 pounds. Well, that was just outrageous. And so he would get clothes given to him, and then he'd go back to Whipple's and have them altered and mended and so on. And this particular suit, we think he picked up probably from the offices of the Propagation of the Gospel for the wedding of the Duke of Kent, which he was invited to in November of 1934. Top hat and the whole thing. It even has the labels of Whipple on the inside of the hat and the coat.
And he sends back, for Christmas of that year, a greeting card that has a caricature on the front of it of a man in profile wearing a top hat and a great coat, carrying an umbrella. And that may be it.
It may be it, exactly. Yep. It looks perfect.
Well, for heaven's sakes. So it was more than successful, his trip to England.
Absolutely. In the course of time, between 1934 and 1937, he was shipping money back home as he was gathering it up. And in those few short years, he built something like 17 churches, a number of missionaries, missions in the region. He was feeding these people who were coming up from the south. I mean, we've got to remember, when he arrived, there was something like 75,000 people who had come into the Athabasca region since 1910, and most of those were settlers who were down in the south. We're talking about the Dust Bowl years. They're coming north. They're hungry. They're starving. He did a lot to change the lives of people in that region very quickly.
I mean, he was buying canoes and boats and
Canoes,
vehicles.
boats, cars, anything that the diocese needed to function.
What a phenomenal thing to be happening in the Depression years, in the 30s. And he's, I mean, not getting any younger, but he's still as vigorous and creative. I mean, he hated uncreativeness in the church, didn't he? Must have been a bit of a boat rocker.
He was in some respects, because there's one letter that he writes home to Ellen talking about a sermon. He was invited to give a sermon at a church, and of course a visiting bishop. A lot of other vicars were brought in from the area to attend, and he said that they started to speak and they just didn't stop. They were going on and on and on, and he comments. Now this isn't Bishop Sovereign. You know, he doesn't talk like this every day, but he comments and says, "These people are so wooden." and obviously he was not the traditional speaker in that sense. He was a bit of a modern man, a bit of a modern thinker, and he even alludes to the fact that perhaps they're not going to like his new ideas. So I imagine he was a bit of a boat rocker, as you say, but regardless, people loved him. His sermons were packed. His lectures were packed. He was saying something that people needed to hear, and he knew how to do it. He knew how to speak.
I've got a couple of articles right here, a couple of artifacts, as a matter of fact, that are dated 1932. This is as a result of his work with the John Howard Society at the provincial prison in Vancouver. And after he had ministered to them, they thanked him for the work that he did. And look at the elegant hand that's used in this.
Yeah, he was very involved with prisoners. And as I said before, his whole motto, "'Tis better to build a boy than to mend a man," it gets back to this whole idea. If you can just get them, you know, thinking in the right way early on, introduce them to the real essence of life, then maybe the tragedies of prison life wouldn't fall them. And this was given to him by the prisoners at the BC Pen in a beautiful handwriting that I found. Beth Nielsen mentioned to me that this was actually written by an inmate who was serving time for forgery. So, so they obviously picked somebody in the pen who had the best handwriting.
And look at this. This one here comes to him from John Howard Society for his work. And look at the detail all around the letterhead and down the side. And it says here too, "You'll also be glad to know this parchment's the work of an inmate at the penitentiary in New Westminster."
Yes, yes. All this work has all been hand done and beautifully done. And he received letters. There was a file in amongst his papers of letters from inmates, really heart-wrenching letters. People who have listened to his sermons, listened to his lectures, talked to him one-on-one, and corresponded with him in prison, and who were really, truly moved to better their lives once they got back into society. He made a profound influence on people who really needed help, who needed attention, who needed a leg up, you might say.
And during the Second World War up to 1950 and his eventual retirement to the Okanagan, he remained busy and chronicling and helping up in the north.
He remained busy. I mean, he visited Vernon on a regular basis, despite the fact that he was in Peace River or if he was in the Yukon. Didn't matter where he was coming to Vernon on a very regular basis and preaching in the various churches. He would be unveiling dedications. He was down in Oliver dedicating some bells to a church down there. He'd be dedicating a window to a church someplace else. So Oliver, Penticton, all through the valley.
And he left an additional legacy, remarkably talented, caring children. And Dr. Art Sovereign, of course, helped start the North Okanagan Urological Association and so many other things. But as always, we've run out of time and can't tell the whole story. Thank you very much, Ron Candy.
You're very welcome.
That's
great.
great.
It was a treat.
The story, of course, Bishop Arthur Sovereign, not only a legacy to the Okanagan, but a legacy to his part of the world, wherever he happened to be. We'll be back again next time with Pioneers and Places. We'll see you then.